perspective, does he see an opportunity in these comprehensive evaluation that's being missed? The floor is yours.
No, thank you very much. I've been involved in a number of those in various capacities, starting with the GF pilot evaluation, IDA replenishment evaluation, and also, as mentioned earlier, the IFAD evaluation, as well as the beginning of this global review of trust funds kind of projects, the collaborative programs, which eventually the World Bank put out some guidelines. But in the UK tradition of evaluation, I would like to use a realist approach and start a little bit quickly about the context of these CEs, because if we, as we just focus on the evaluation product without looking at the context, we end up with a micro disconnect, and I think that's where we are in this whole business, as the SADEP report of Paul Eisenman highlights. Now, first of all, in terms of the context, we're at a time with enormous pressure on multilaterals today to demonstrate quote-unquote value for money. The share of aid flows going to core funding of multilaterals is shooting down, particularly in the United Nations. On the other hand, the share of trust funds which are directly controlled by donors is going up, which is not a very good sign for multilateralism. The aid architecture is getting worse and worse in terms of the proliferation of agencies, higher transaction costs, poor alignment with developing countries, and harmonization across donors. The Paris Declaration evaluation, in my view, did not really highlight this clearly enough. We have new donors who come in who are not part of the aid club, so to speak, which has good aspects to it, both private sector and the BRICS and the emerging market countries. And so this is adding another dimension. That aid is less important, as I've argued in many cases, compared to trade, migration, foreign direct investment, and so on. But mostly, the fourth point of the context is that these comprehensive evaluations are increasingly driven by donors, with very little input from developing countries. Now, the question you are asking, based on the evidence that we have so far, do these country evaluations take account of these aid architecture issues, of all these, whether or not everybody may be doing the right thing, but as a total, we get negative synergy, so to speak. Well, what we see increasingly, it mirrors the aid architecture itself. We have a proliferation of those things, of comprehensive evaluation. It's a jungle of divided and fragmented reports. They all march to different drummers. They are uncoordinated, an explosion of comparative assessment, because with budgets being squeezed by the crisis, and also with the fact that you have Ministry of Foreign Affairs taking increasing control over independent aid agencies and looking for commercial advantage or geopolitical advantage. The UK calls itself an aid superpower, for example. You are really facing a very different kind of than at the turn of the century, for example. So we have an explosion of comparative assessment. MOPAN, EvalNet, COMPASS, MAR, AMA, GRPP, CODA, and this is just a sample of these things, which are all, again, uncoordinated. So really, what I'm saying is that the rationale for this group, and it is an independent group, it is a committee of practice, it has no legitimacy in terms of the power structure, but I think it has its place. What is to be done? One, we do need guidelines. It could be helpful. They may not be followed. Secondly, we should look to a case where we do no longer do comprehensive evaluations, because these are subverting the governance of these multilateral institutions, because they're essentially donor-controlled with very little voice from developing countries. And it subverts the board organization where at least the developing countries are represented. So that's the second point. And the third point is that the glimmer of hope is post-Busan, that there is a global partnership which is more symmetrical or less asymmetrical, which is bringing in developing countries more prominently. I personally do not buy into the joint evaluation approach. I would much rather see developing countries controlled evaluation and a response by the donor countries or the other way around, so that we have a real contest of ideas and real truth to power. So I think this is how it comes out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear.